for starting these live streams, and welcome back on the weekly live stream on the Sunday. And greetings, got the Slava Ukrainian t-shirt on. So what has been happening in the last few days that's of interest in the Russo-Ukrainian war? Well, it's been mainly on the diplomatic front. As I commented on this channel, Putin was a no-show, even though he'd suggested meeting in person, and they sent a particularly low-level delegation to Turkey to meet with their Ukrainian, well, I can't really say counterparts, but their the other people the people representing Ukraine on the other side of the table, who were much more senior and well-seasoned. So basically, they sent the B team, the C team, and it was not people with the real authority to make decisions. And they reiterated more or less the same demands, of more or less Ukraine surrender in effect. And that obviously, considering the situation on the battlefield and the economic situation, we look at the political, economic, and military situation of both sides, it makes no sense that Ukraine would consider handing over lots of territory that they currently control in exchange for a temporary ceasefire, not even a long-term peace agreement. Even that wouldn't make any sense based on what Russia demanded, or even close to it. And in fact, it seemed that the Russians even increased their demands and demanded not just that Ukraine give Russia legally, de jure, 5 parts of their territory, the 4 oblasts plus the Autonomous Republic of Crimea to Russia, but also Sumy and Kharkiv Oblast. So they just increased their demands. This is not a serious attempt at diplomacy. That's because Russia, or at least its leadership, primarily Vladimir Putin, believes that they will be in a strong position in a few months from now to demand maybe even more. Maybe they can make progress on the battlefield. In any case, they don't feel like they'll be in a weaker position. That's probably a pretty good assessment in the sense that they can probably get to the end of the summer, maybe even the end of the autumn, without a big deterioration in their economic, political, or military situation. However, after that, it will probably change. So expecting the Russian economy to start hurting more and more as we get into the second half of 2025. Also, they need to maintain very high rates of recruitment in terms of manpower because of the savage losses that they incur on the front on a daily basis. Plus, they're running through their stocks of Soviet-era materiel that they mainly repurpose for the front. And once they have run through most of that, and it's not like they're going to run out of all of that in 2025, although in some areas they're expected to start to run out, and this will cause a major problem. So that maybe at that point, Russia will feel like it's a good time for them to take a pause and restock and rebuild their military for presumably another offensive, or to redeploy those resources to threaten or attack somewhere else in the region. Could also be the Baltic states. So that is where we're at. There is going to be a call between Trump and Putin, apparently tomorrow, Monday. And we'll see what comes out of that. I don't have particularly high expectations, judging by what has happened since Donald Trump was elected president. He claimed, obviously, during the campaign that he would solve the war in a day. Then it became, once he's actually inaugurated, then it became 100 days. Now we're well over 100 days, and we're in no better position or no closer to any sort of even truce. We haven't even had a truce, never mind a ceasefire, never mind a peace agreement, never mind serious negotiations. So we're not really any further along than we were, say, this time, at least before the election of Donald Trump. But that is what it is, and I don't expect much to come out of the phone call that would change really the dynamics with respect to the Russo-Ukrainian war. However, just to reiterate, I believe that will change. Very highly likely that will start to change in the second half of this year, but probably going to be fourth quarter by the time we see the impact of that. Big developments happening in the next few hours are in Romania. Romania has the second round of its presidential election. Now, I have some videos on this channel talking about what happened the first time Romania ran the presidential election late last year. The elections were then annulled. Călin Georgescu had been the frontrunner in the first round of voting. He is alleged to have had illegal campaign financing, supporting fascism, and what's actually legionnarism. I think technically I have to look at the Romanian law, what it says, but it's considered a form of fascism, and also been supported illegally by foreign state. Russia is the most likely suspect there, since he's a very, very pro-Moscow line, very openly pro-Moscow, and he was not allowed to run in this election when it was rerun. Also, the woman who finished in second place in the first round of voting in 2024 did very, very poorly in the rerun. She did not even come close to getting in the second round. She actually only got less. It was like between 2 and 3% of the vote. It was 2 point something. So from someone who got into the second round with over 20 in the first time the election was run, it's quite dramatic to see them get only 10% of that when it was rerun. So really, the first election to this rerun, it's widely different. So George Simenon won the first round 2 weeks ago, in the sense he got the most votes. You need to get over 50% to avoid a runoff, and he did not do that. He got a little bit over 40%, and he is running against the mayor of Bucharest, Dan, and whilst he was way behind in the first round of voting, you have to also remember that he had many candidates in that first round. He only narrowly finished in second place over third place. He is also an anti-establishment candidate, but he is pro-European Union, pro-Ukrainian, which is obviously important for the content of this channel, as well as pretty more stridently, and pro-NATO, and also more stridently in that camp. Simenon is against providing more military aid to Ukraine. He's considered more friendly to Moscow, although there is a nuance in Romania that his party is an irredentist party, so they actually want to take over Moldova and parts of Ukraine. Simenon says not by force, although one would suspect that that might change in the future, where he empowered, were Ukraine to be weak. Let's be frank about it. It's a bit very similar. He also wants to be in alliance with Viktor Orban and Robert Fico. Fico is in Slovakia and Orban in Hungary, basically to try and undermine how the European Union works, in a sense of pulling a lot of the centralized power. The European Union basically works as a hybrid of a federation with a confederation, and they want to make it really a very weak confederation. This would very seriously undermine European unity, which in foreign policy is very hard already, but in just many spheres. So that's seen particularly favorable by Moscow, because they want to weaken the European Union as another actor, as a rival power in the region. And so you have this nuance about Romania actually wanting to take over parts of Ukraine and Moldova if they were under the control of that's his party, the Alliance for Romanians, is the Unity of Romanians, yeah. And that would obviously clash with Vladimir Putin's geopolitical interest, because he also wants to take over not just parts of Ukraine, but all of Ukraine and Moldova. So that is kind of the clash, the nuance there, that he's not really pro-Russian in that sense, because they were actually rivals in a scenario where he were to take power in Romania. So basically, he had this considerable lead after the first round, we could say. However, there were not so many other candidates with Simenon's, the, we'll say, anti-Ukrainian candidate, or cut off military aid to Ukraine candidate, and maybe even try to take parts of Ukraine. And because of that, it's a little bit deceptive how much of a lead he really has, because the mayor of Bucharest, Dan, he ran against many candidates that share his political views. So obviously their vote was split in the first round. Both the opinion polls, which saw Simenon ahead, have flipped in the last 2 weeks with the campaigning and speeches, and Simenon has actually dropped a good bit in the polling. And also on Polymarket, if you look at the prediction there, where people are betting, that recently, last couple of years, has actually been a better indicator than opinion polls. They showed that Dan will win the election, so way more pro-Ukrainian candidate will win the election over Simenon. However, it is not very clear if that will come to pass or not. So those elections are still ongoing. I think, they're still ongoing in Romania. The polls will close pretty soon. What I saw is that they have had a very high turnout. Also amongst the diaspora, there's very high turnout. And that's interesting. More young people are apparently voting. So, and also certain parts of the diaspora that are more favorable from a Ukrainian point of view. They are also voting higher than they did in the first round. Like, for example, Moldova, which has a large number of Romanian citizens, and they are expected to vote overwhelmingly for Dan and not for Simeon. Simeon did surprisingly very well in parts of Western Europe amongst the Romanian diaspora. And he actually got up, I think, about 60% of the diaspora vote in the first round. So that was a big surprise. Where that will continue, we'll have to see. And what the final result is, we should know that, I guess, later on tonight or early in the morning, exactly where it is. The diaspora vote is typically counted last, I'm pretty sure, because they obviously have to get the ballots in from those other countries. So they would probably still marginally fall in favor of Simeon. So if he is very, very close or ahead, once the votes are counted in Romania itself, he may still actually win with the diaspora votes. But that will be a big event for Ukraine. Ukraine obviously would prefer to see Dan elected president of Romania because, well, if Simeon is elected president, we have hostile political leaders in power on 3 of Ukraine's borders. We'll have Hungary with Orban, Fico in Slovakia, and then you would have Simeon in Romania. So you'd only actually have Poland, which has Donald Tusk as the prime minister. They're actually having the first round of their new presidential elections. We got Duda. But in any case, PIS is maybe less friendly, it's fair to say, to Ukraine, but it's still pretty pro-Ukrainian in general anyways. It's even more pro-Ukrainian with Donald Tusk, I would say. But that's a lot less contentious in the sense that the 2 big political parties in Poland are definitely in Ukraine's camp overall, not 100% on every issue, but in general, they are extremely pro-Ukrainian. There is another party that polled at around 10% in Poland that is anti-Ukrainian, but they are not real factors in this Polish presidential elections. They will not have any chance of getting into power. So from that point of view, the Polish election is less of an issue for Ukraine. It is important in European politics, however, because PIS is starting to form an alliance with people like Simeon. Simeon actually went to campaign in the Polish elections, strangely, or he gave some commentary to support the PIS candidate in the Polish elections. So you could see that bloc forming under PIS, perhaps with Orban and Fico and maybe Simeon if he were elected in Romania. However, in the opinion polls, it looks like Civic Platform's candidate will probably come out on top. That's not certain. Probably the leading candidate from today's first round. In any case, that is less contentious from a Ukrainian point of view and the Russo-Ukrainian war. The really big election is happening in Romania today. So drop your comments down below and your questions if you're watching this on replay, and I will be making lots of content on this Russo-Ukrainian war in the coming week or 2. I will be going back to Ukraine. I'm not in Ukraine at the moment, but I will be returning. So let me know what kind of content you will see. I'll definitely be in Lviv. I may be in other cities in Ukraine pretty soon. Let me know any suggestions for videos that you'd like to see on this geopolitics channel. We'll, of course, be doing a weekly live stream and a lot more frequent videos, getting back into the production cycle I had maybe about a month ago, and trying to scale this channel. If you are traveling to Ukraine, again, links down below in the description to this video. There is a guide if you are planning to visit Ukraine, where give you lots of logistical information, how to stay safe, how to travel there, and also a hospitality guide for cities like Lviv, Chernovtsi, Uzhhorod, Kyiv, and Odessa. They are cities that are safer, in inverted commas. Obviously, there is the caveat that you are going to a country in a state of war. So obviously, don't be cavalier with your decision to go there. However, if you are going to go, then this will help you. There's a link to that down below if you'd like to purchase it and take advantage of that, and also give me a little bit more motivation for making these videos. I'd probably have my PayPal down there as well if you want to make a contribution for these kind of live streams and the content while I wait to get monetized. I'm a bit over halfway there, and I need to make a lot more content that hopefully will pop and bring the channel and grow it and make a bigger contribution in the sphere, the infosphere, with respect to the Russo-Ukrainian war. So I'm going to sign off in this live stream. Slava Ukraini, Horom Slava, and I will see you in the next live stream or video this week. We will see each other there. Do побачення.